right, welcome to Investment Banking Insights. This is the only show dedicated to helping you learn both the technical and non-technical aspects of investment banking. And I'm here again with Jason Lum. Jason, welcome back to the show. For people who didn't catch the last episode we did together, I think it was a couple of months ago. Maybe just give like a quick, few second brief about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, Alex. Always a pleasure. So, quick background on myself. I went to a non-target university, the University of Ottawa. I also studied accounting. So, did not have the best start initially, and then worked my way up into like Big Four accounting initially. Realized I did not enjoy that, and then did quite a few 5-6 different internships eventually within investment banking and M&A at a bulge bracket, and then worked more so within real estate private equity. So got into high finance despite being a non-target, and then in my last year university started JHL Consulting Group to help more non-target students across US, Canada, UK, etc. Break into these roles themselves as well. So that's what's been keeping me busy for the past 2 years or so.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jason. And if you are watching out there or listening out there and you didn't catch that last episode we did, definitely check it out. We talked a lot about different types of roles to get into investment banking, what that looks like. We talked more about Jason's story. But today we're going to talk about a couple of different topics. I think one thing that's been, on both of our minds with our respective audiences is what things are looking like now that it's January 2025. This episode might release in February. The recruitment for analyst positions is picking up, right? Especially in the US and Canada. So can you tell me kind of what you're seeing now in terms of like big picture, timeline? What does that look like? I know you and I were talking a little bit before this, like some things have already started actually. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, just taking a step back, recruitment is just becoming more and more accelerated as each year seems to go by, and it's taking a lot of students by surprise as well. When I was thinking of doing recruitment, and when I was doing it back in summer 2022, it was probably more of a 12-month standard process where, I applied about the summer before and then did the interviews in September and then got the offer at the end of September. So that was only about, 6 to 7 months before my summer term. Nowadays, we've been, and then over the past, 2023, 24, obviously now into 25 and summer 26 at this point, we've just been seeing the trend in terms of not only in US, Canada as well, banks are just starting the processes sooner and sooner. So as you alluded to, in, I want to say closer to the end of December, at least for the US, RBC sort of opened up initially, started off their process, and then there's a few other firms that followed pretty quickly afterwards, William Blair and a bunch of other firms. I would say most of the bulge brackets and elite boutiques at this point in the US have already essentially opened up their applications and their processes there. So once again, it's not like the deadlines are immediate. They do review applications on more of a rolling basis, but they're just starting to get the ball moving forward and starting to post applications a lot quicker, especially in the US. And then Canada is essentially following suit as well. So over the past few weeks, 3-4 weeks, RBC also opened. RBC tends to open up almost as the soonest bank, and then from there, Goldman, some of the larger U.S. banks within Canada have also opened up. Not all of them, but those should definitely start opening up closer to the end of January or the start of February. So, yeah, just in terms of the landscape, it's just becoming more and more advanced. Typically, once again, the norm was 12 months in advance. Now it's almost like that. The standard is almost 16 months in advance, if not even a bit further out. In terms of the recruitment process at this point and at this given time, Alex.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Jason. That's a great quick overview. So basically right now, these applications are either open, have just started to come open for analyst positions, or they're about to be open.
Yeah.
And this is not for this year. This is for 2026
right. This
summer,
is
right?
Summer 25. That's 2026, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so in these applications, I mean, is there any way other than maybe like tailoring the resume to kind of stand out at that very early phase
Yeah.
if people
No,
are
great
putting
question. I mean,
their
like
applications in?
hundreds of students come to me with questions very similar to that. I would say there's a few things like, and we did sort of touch on a few items as well, I believe, in the first podcast. I would say first thing is even taking a step back. This is summer 26 recruitment. Summer 25, a lot of people are also sort of scrambling for that, given that they're looking for an internship in May. So some suggestions that I'm providing to my students are as follows. If you haven't landed an internship for summer 25 at this point, that should still be your core or main focus, just given that for summer 26 at the moment, the only postings that are really available at this point are purely just for investment banking and like high finance roles. There's of course going to be other opportunities for summer 26 that will be opening up as we get closer towards that date. But for summer 25, it really is crunch time. I mean, it's already the end of January here, and you're either going to be working in an internship or not come May. So what I'm recommending students to do is if they haven't landed a summer role for 2025, that should still be their primary focus. The reason being is, once again, you either miss the window or you don't. And then the other thing as well is, to your point, to stand out. Once again, my competitive advantage was just trying to get as much relevant work experience as possible. So if you land something for summer 25, whether you're in first year, which will put you, further steps ahead amongst your competition, or this would be your second year internship, regardless, you're going to have an additional professional experience that even if you haven't started it formally, you can put as like incoming XYZ analyst at XYZ company, and you can put that on your resume, and hopefully you can submit that on your resume in time for applications that are happening for 26. So when you have your summer 25 locked down in terms of at least professional experience, you have more things to bring to the table, and you become more attractive to potential companies for 26. So one would be getting professional experience, and that starts with this upcoming summer 25. The second thing is, once again, from that, like, you can only really make so many adjustments to your resume in terms of the format, the presentation, really, unless your resume is, very attractive, you have tons of experience, strong GPA, ideally go to a target university, you have tons of extracurriculars. The main way you can truly stand out, and once again, highly relevant for summer 25, summer 26 at this point, is obviously through networking and trying to get the right connections that you can leverage and use for your recruitment process moving forward. So happy to dive into that a bit further, obviously, in terms of what that looks like. Ideally, Alex, rather than just submitting your resume to hundreds of applications and postings here and just blindly hoping that you get an interview or two, which is really just not within your control, ideally you're reaching out actively to analysts and you're trying to email them and get them on a coffee chat or a call, almost like how we're doing this, but obviously in a different sense. And then you're trying to, build rapport with them, build the relationship, start with personal stuff, go into professional stuff, and you're really just trying to make them like you, know you, and trust you a bit more, where you can make more of a targeted ask at the end. So obviously, finance is very connection driven, and having the right network and having the right people in front of you, in addition to a good resume, is something that will really help you stand out amongst the crowd initially.
Okay, thank you. So there are things you can do with the resume, of course. We know that. The students know that. But in terms of kind of going that extra step, you really need to be doing the networking with the banks.
Yes.
And it sounds like primarily if you're trying to get that summer analyst position, you need to be networking with analysts who are kind of like 1 to 2 steps ahead of you. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly. That's the other thing. So in terms of who to network with, a lot of people think that, a lot of people get it wrong in the sense that either they target HR just because they think that, they're the people who run recruitment, they're obviously in that team. They think that they're the ones reviewing the resumes. There's a few flaws with that. And then secondly, a lot of people also target like MDs or people at the very top, thinking that obviously they sort of run the whole thing and they have the most say. There's a few downfalls with both of those. A would be with HR. Frankly, they're not actually very involved with the process itself. And they're not conducting the interviews. Frankly, at this point, they're probably not even really reviewing the resumes. So in terms of that process, and the other thing as well is so many people just target them, right? So they're getting so many LinkedIn messages, so many emails. they're just getting bombarded. And the second thing in regards to MDs is sure, maybe they have the most say here and there, or technically the most seniority, but in terms of getting a hold of them, it's very difficult, right? Like these people, they're busy in their MD role, and then afterwards they're leaving the office, they're going back home to their family or to their own pursuits. So it's not really their job, and at this point when they're 20 years into their career, they're not here to really just spend half an hour with a random student. That being said, if you have the right connection through like a family friend, by all means, try and leverage that. But it's going to be very difficult to just try and reach out to a stranger in an MD position and expect many results. So what we recommend, Alex, is, it depends on where you're at, but generally if you're an undergrad, so you're going for 726, for instance, targeting mostly the actual investment banking analysts that are actually doing the role that you would be doing, ideally 1 to 2 years into that role. Or, for instance, you're more of an MBA student, then targeting more of the investment banking associates. So targeting the people who are actually doing the role that you would be doing as an intern, but in terms of a full-time basis. The reason being is a few different reasons. A, they were in your shoes before. So they were in my shoes before, they were in your shoes before, Alex, and they were in your listeners' shoes before. They did this recruitment process themselves, and they did this networking game as well. So, they were doing this process themselves. They were fortunate to probably get connected with the right people as well, who were generous enough to give them half an hour of their time. So they're open to reciprocating that as well, as long as they feel the student's genuine and actually has somewhat of a serious chance of breaking in as well. And the other thing as well is, so they're just most open, despite having the busiest schedules, they're the most open to actually doing these types of calls. It's almost their job anyways. Secondly, they're actually the ones who are typically running the first round interviews as well. So they're doing the technical round, the initial actual interviews. So if your interviewer, that's a huge leg up, right? In terms of the analysts who are doing those first round interviews. And I would say the third thing is they're the ones, once again, doing the actual role. You can ask them questions about the role, about the company, and sort of see their perspective in their shoes and really get assessment, Alex, in terms of, well, is this actually the role that I want to be doing? Is this a company that I actually see myself working in, right? Because it may end up being that, okay, based on what you're hearing, investment banking is maybe not the right fit. Maybe it's equity research, or maybe it's more buy side that you're interested in, or maybe that specific company is not exactly what you're looking for. So it also helps you as a candidate evaluate, is this the right type of role? Is this the right company as well? And then at the end, based on how the conversation goes, they're more than happy, once again, if you structure it correctly and if you do have a strong resume and past experience, they can then refer you to those next steps, whatever that may be, whether that's pushing your resume to HR, pushing the resume up to more of an MD or more of a senior, and leveraging their connections and their power within that is a much more effective a way of going about networking than, once again, just trying to message HR or MD. So we mostly focus on more of the analysts or the associates, just based on what type of role you're going for. Got it.
Okay, so don't message HR. I imagine, unless it's an HR question, obviously, then you want to ask the right people. But don't expect answers from managing directors or senior bankers. But associates, analysts, if it's pertaining to your role that you're actually trying to get into, then it makes more sense to try to connect with them. And so then once you do kind of those coffee chats, that can give you a leg up in terms of getting an interview. What kind of timing can candidates expect, Jason, between when they submit their application and when they hear back for the next round for an interview?
Yeah.
I imagine this varies by bank, but have you seen any trends or rules of thumb there?
It definitely depends, right? It definitely depends on the process, the bank, how fast they're willing to move. So once again, just taking some examples. So let's just say RBC, they've already opened their applications, right? Like about a month ago or so, give or take. So they're reviewing even though the deadline may be way further out, right? they're reviewing the applications, and a lot of the banks are just reviewing the applications on a rolling basis. So once again, think of the banks. They want to secure, they're obviously competing with other banks to secure the best talent. So they want to go out early, secure the best talent early on, get their recruitment done, and really build out their recruitment pipeline that way. So for your listeners, like, despite maybe seeing the application, being way further out, even though the posting's active, we suggest to get your resume in order, get your cover letter polished, submit that as early as possible, unless perhaps you're waiting for like a 2025 role where perhaps you can put that as an incoming. That's really the only reason to potentially delay. But then from there, submit it, do your networking, and then really, once again, it depends. But in terms of the rolling basis, you can probably start expecting some of the top candidates to start getting interviews as early as February, in terms of at least first rounds. And then from there, once again, the banks will deliberate, then send out the Super Day invites. So yeah, I would say, at least given that we're in the end of January, some of the interviews will start rolling up in February, and then probably maybe into the tail end of March, and then some of the offers will start being sending out at that point, and let's say early March or perhaps later on in April. So the process moves really quickly. And once again, when I was thinking of my process, it's a bit of a funny story, and I think we did touch on it a little bit in my the first episode, but I remember I was actually on vacation. I just submitted the application to CIBC, and then like about 2 weeks later, I got an email asking if I was available for a first round interview literally 2 days afterwards. So once again, that's the other thing. Once you get an email, it's not like, hey, Alex, are you available for an interview like 1 month from now? It's more like, hey, are you available like this week, right? And once again, there's not a ton of flexibility behind that as well. So that sort of shocks students once again. They're like, oh, shoot, like I haven't even really prepared for interviews. I don't even really know, haven't really done rusty on technicals, haven't really prepared any of my behaviorals. So that's a topic happy to delve into as well. But once again, everything's done just very accelerated. It's very quick. You have to be on your feet, and you have to have all your stuff in order to really break into these competitive roles at this point.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And it makes sense, because when the bank reaches out, like, they're ready. They're
Right.
ready to talk to you.
Right.
They've already taken their time to decide whatever they were going to decide in terms of who's going to move forward or not. So it just underscores to me the importance of, when you submit that application, you pretty much, you don't necessarily need to be like 100% at that moment, but you should be pretty far along in terms of your technical, behavioral interview preparation, because as was in the case with you, Jason, I mean, you got an interview invite a couple days after submission. Yeah. And so it sounds like there's maybe a couple of weeks to a month-ish before people hear back, and then you do your first round, then you do your Super Day. Offers are happening within, it sounds like, about 2 months in many cases, right?
For some of the bulge brackets, one of the elite boutiques, yeah, I mean, their processes are pretty strict and pretty streamlined.
And does it differ a lot with some of the more independent or middle market?
Yeah, for sure. Those ones, once again, they don't typically start it off as soon, and then once again, they almost sort of let the bulge brackets do their thing, and then they're sort of trying to clean up for the rest of the talent that's out there. So it's harder to comment on those. I don't think as many of those have opened up, but those ones, you sort of miss the bulge bracket or elite boutiques, and that's really your next best bet in terms of a candidate. Looking at middle market firms, boutique firms, some of your smaller players in terms of still trying to get your foot in the door there.
And are there any trends there in terms of those types of banks, in terms of timing? What should students be thinking about if they say they really are interested in an independent bank?
Yeah, if they're really interested in that, like if they don't like the bulge brackets or the boutiques, they want to work at, maybe a more specialized firm, or they like the entrepreneur nature of the smaller firm, and that's perfectly fine. What I would really recommend, once again, is just sort of what I was mentioning before, starting on that networking game really early on. So think of these smaller companies, let's say maybe it's only like a 25-person team. Right. These are small teams. If you even know like one or two people, you already know like a decent percentage of the actual firm itself, compared to obviously your huge banks where there's so many employees. So once again, the importance of networking there is really important, and the fact that those haven't started just yet is a good time to start doing the networking, right? Because what we recommend once again for students is you technically, like right now, it's almost a bit late to do your networking technically just because the postings are already open, right? It's going to be really transactional. Everyone already knows like why you're sending them an email or why you're sending them a LinkedIn request. So really all of this groundwork should have been done prior to this point, right? More so in your later months of 2024 at least. But once again, for these smaller companies, if they haven't started the process just yet, now is really a good time. You have a time window that you could use to your advantage where you can reach out to these smaller firms, build that connection early on when you anticipate that they're going to be doing recruitment, but they haven't started that process just yet, so they're not getting flooded with so many requests. Once again, you're building the relationship over time, and you can also inquire a little bit further in terms of what the next steps or what the process may look like so you can prepare in advance. But maybe another quick point on this is like, once again, like everything's starting off so more in advance. It's getting more competitive each and every year. Generally students know that the process is going to be competitive. It's going to be rigorous, but perhaps they don't know that it's going to be this soon in advance. The analogy that I provide to students is think of like an exam. Like at the end of your 4-month term, whether that's April or December, you know that you're going to have a final exam. When should you be preparing for that exam? Well, not the week before, right? Like, once again, the week before is almost like when applications are live. Like, that's a little bit late. You're only going to have a certain time window to really prepare. Really, the learning, all the groundwork, all the foundation should have been established in the first month, the second month, the third month, where you're consistently, attending class, you're doing your practice problems, you're staying on top of your assignments, so that when final weeks does come around, really you're not scrambling like everyone else, and you've already gotten everything in line. And the other thing as well is like you actually understand the concepts. You're not just scrambling, you're not just memorizing things. Like, for instance, people are not just memorizing the 400 questions, the answers, etc. They actually conceptually understand the concepts. So if they change up the questions or throw you a curveball, you're much more prepared than just trying to rely on your short-term memory. So that's an analogy that I provide to all the students as well.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It's so true though. Like, timing really is your competitive advantage in a way, right, at this phase, because when you're competing with a lot of people who are just mechanically kind of doing the same things that you are, if you have networking calls in late fall, September, October, November, before the holidays, like that's going to set you up so that when you submit your application, you're like, oh, I already know people at this firm. I've talked to them. Maybe you follow up, right? But you're not having that initial conversation then. You're not waiting.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for all the insights, Jason, that you've given into this high-level process. We need to wrap up, but really appreciate you coming on again and giving so much value to the viewers. Where can people find you in JHL Consulting?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Alex. And once again, I guess just to last few words of wisdom is, once again, like recruitment, it's not like grades where like you're trying to get the best grades possible. It's really like pass or fail. So in this world for 25 and obviously 26 recruitment, you either get a job offer in investment banking or you don't. And obviously it is very competitive. So put your best foot forward, try and really figure out what is your competitive advantage. Ask yourself, how do you stand out from the crowd, and try and get professional experience, get networking, or get tailored from support from someone who's already been there, and try and streamline your process as much as possible. But yeah, in terms of further connecting, I'm more than happy to connect and provide free resources for some of your students. You guys can send me a connection request over LinkedIn, and more than happy to connect further there. And perhaps Alex can also link my website in the description as well for further resources. So thanks so much again, Alex, and all the best with recruitment.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Yeah, and link will be in the description if you want to connect further with Jason or you want some more tailored help with your recruiting process. So again, thanks for bringing the value, and we'll see you next time, Jason.
Yeah, thank you so much.